The release of Animal Crossing New Horizons Switch 2 Edition is bittersweet to say the least. The new update got me and plenty of others back into the game, but now it feels like the next entry in the series is further away than ever before. So in the meantime, while we wait for that next game to finally come out, I decided to make my own. I really tried to get into the heads of Nintendo's creative team to figure out where Animal Crossing could realistically go next while still staying true to the series' roots. But other than that, there are no special rules for this challenge. So without further ado, here's my pitch for Animal Crossing 6. Animal Crossing New Horizons was the first time the series took us out of its typical forest setting, which, to be fair, makes complete sense. In Japan, these games are called Dobutsu no Mori. I really hope I didn't butcher that, which directly translates to Animal Forest. But after 4 games with slight variations on the same setting, it makes sense that the team would want to venture out a little bit. And the island setting that they chose was refreshing back in 2020. But now that it's been half a decade and every other life sim game copied the island concept, I think it's time to go back to the drawing board. I sincerely doubt that they're going to go back to the forest setting anytime soon, but at the same time, I don't want to completely remove that from the series' identity. So, I came up with a compromise. The game begins with you in a safari jeep, completely surrounded by trees, shrubs, and vines. You ride across bumpy terrain as a familiar-looking purple cat stumbles into the seat next to you. He introduces himself as Rover and asks about why you're going to the Lost City. You can answer, or just ask him the same question. After a short conversation with him, you're prompted to create your avatar, and then the game truly begins. Arriving at your destination, you're greeted by Tom Nook, who formally welcomes you to Nook Inc. Tom gestures around the area, directing your attention to dilapidated buildings covered in moss, cracked streets overtaken by roots, and unkempt weeds everywhere. He explains that this place used to be a metropolis, before everyone who lived there mysteriously disappeared, leaving the place frozen in time until nature took it back. And since then, it's become an overgrown wasteland. Tom jokes that he was able to buy the place for next to nothing thanks to all that bad press. But getting back to business, the raccoon informs you that you are now the lead on this project, because you're the only one who showed up. He gives you a tent and the title of City Redevelopment Manager before explaining that he'll be happy to upgrade you to a real house once you rejuvenate enough of the city. He's confident that this city will become a thriving economy once he can attract enough villagers to live here with you two. But until then, it's time to get to work. The camera tilts up to the sky to finally reveal our title card, Animal Crossing New Beginnings. Alright, we have a lot to go through, but let's start from the beginning. When I was a kid, one of my favorite elements of Animal Crossing New Leaf was seeing how Main Street developed over time. Seeing how my efforts to bring life back to this little town were reflected in its architecture and city life is what kept me coming back to the game day after day. And that core Animal Crossing memory is what inspired me to expand that little part of New Leaf into the entire concept for this game. And on top of that, it retains the Animal Forest feel while still being in a whole new setting. Furthermore, I wanted to address another common complaint about modern Animal Crossing, that it feels less like a life sim and more like a decorating game. You'll see this point of contention addressed again later, but the way this concept solves that is by removing you from your position of power. In New Leaf, you were the mayor, and in New Horizons, you were basically just God. But now, in New Beginnings, you're once again at the mercy of everyone's favorite capitalist. Nook will only upgrade your quality of life relative to how much you do for him. This idea is sort of inspired by the real-world story of Fordlandia from the early 20th century, but gameplay-wise, it also serves to solve a problem my girlfriend and I both ran into in our most recent runs of New Horizons. We both fully completed our houses before really even touching the island around us, so we had these big, beautiful mansions surrounded by emptiness. And not only did that bother me in the last game, but it also goes against the fundamental idea of this one. You want to be completely rebuilding this whole city, not just your one little space. But back to the Lost City, I'll admit that while a cool idea in the beginning, once you actually redevelop it, the game could very easily lose its foresty charm. On top of that, it really doesn't do much to shake up the gameplay formula in a meaningful way. It's all just aesthetic after all. So before you go to the comments to poke holes in my idea, just know that I kept those potential pitfalls at the forefront of my mind when designing this next section, and I think I found a solution for both. Like every other Animal Crossing game, there isn't going to be a single map that's set in stone. The game will pull from several different random ones that all sort of have the same core ideas, and you'll pick from a selection of maps like these two. Nook Inc. headquarters is in the middle there, like resident services in New Horizons, and the airport is close to the bottom. Now this section that I've blocked out here on the map is the extent of the city. Everything surrounding it is a heavily wooded jungle area. That's how we'll get around this giant city problem I mentioned earlier. So should you choose, you could keep that natural look alive throughout most of the map. You'll also notice that we're no longer blocked in by water, as there are now mountains at the edge of the map on one side and this car icon on the other. That car is where you'll go to try out a semi-new feature, Expeditions. These essentially replace Nook Miles tickets and are run by Cap'n. When you go on an expedition, you'll travel through one of several different types of biomes, and you might even meet a new villager friend along the way. More on that later. Things really start to shake up when it comes to the mountains on the other side. Once you rank up enough for Tom Nook to supply you with climbing equipment, you can make your way to the top of the mountains to discover rare items such as fossils and gyroids, as well as some others you might expect like pine trees, mushrooms, and crystal rocks. The peak of the mountain can not only be customized if you're so inclined, but it also features a telescope, a guaranteed balloon present spawn, and one other special thing that I'm saving for later. But let me tell you the thing that I'm really excited about. Not only can you climb up these mountains, but you can also go inside them. Without any special equipment, straight from the jump of the game, you can walk into a cave at the base of the mountain. When you enter, you'll be led downwards where you'll discover that there are underground tunnels spanning the entirety of the map. That's right, we've essentially doubled the map size here and created a new way for you to interact with your environment. In the past, Animal Crossing has allowed you to collect items on land, near the water, and even in the water. But the introduction of these two new biomes grants the player access to never-before-seen items and critters. Towards the beginning of the game, Tom Nook tells you that he doesn't just want to expand, but he also wants to preserve the natural wonders of this place. He says his old friend Blathers, a museum owner, would love to see all the new creatures this land has to offer. He may even open up shop in the city if he's really impressed. So, Nook tasks you with going down to the cave to collect a specimen that Blathers has never had in his museum before. At this point, you can really catch anything: cave crickets, beetles, isopods, spiders, etc. But as you search the cave, you come across something a little unexpected: a campsite. Entering the tent, you'll find the very first villager that you'll ever see in-game. And interestingly, it's a bat. Which brings us perfectly into our next section. My personal biggest issue with New Horizons was its implementation of the villagers. There were barely any new additions to the cast, and talking to them just felt so flat. Villagers are the heart and soul of Animal Crossing, so seeing New Horizons treat them like glorified decorations really didn't fly with me. And while I have a lot of potential fixes for it, yes, the first thing that came to my mind was bats. New Horizons gave us 18 total new villagers across all updates, but only 8 at launch. And to be blunt, that is an unacceptably low number. Compare that to New Leaf's 116 new villagers, and things really get put into perspective. I like round numbers, and I want every single villager to make a comeback. Yes, even that one, make it happen 7-Eleven. And so I want New Beginnings to have a grand total of 500 villagers, meaning that we need to introduce 86 new ones. But taking a look at the species we have now, adding 86 reskins of the same basic animals would make the game feel bloated. So in addition to bats, I also came up with other new villager species. Something I really took into consideration when deciding on which animals to add was if they had a unique enough silhouette. Every other villager's body type makes it easy to tell what they are from a distance, so I wanted to keep that design philosophy intact. I also avoided species that are traditionally NPCs, so much to my dismay, I couldn't include my favorite animal, otters. But with that said, let's break down the new species. I chose bats, snakes, possums, and capybaras. Now thanks to this handy graph created by Lunar Trespassers on Reddit, we can see the spread of how many members there are of each species. These average out to around 11 members per type, so we can apply that broadly to all of our new species and get 44 new villagers just like that. But of course, that still leaves us with 42 to design. Now again, our goal here is to avoid redundancy, so as much as we all love them, we really don't need 20 more cat villagers cluttering up the game. We've got to focus on the underrepresented categories. Just as a quick editor's note, I want to specify that the only type that we're excluding from this fix the underrepresented species idea is octopi, because it seems by design that they're sort of underrepresented and kind of rare. Anyway, before we can serve some of these underrepresented villager types, we first need to re-establish the way that these categories are laid out. For example, you might take a look at the fact that there are only 4 cow villagers and think, oh, well, we really need to bring that number up, right? Well, no, that's actually not a very fair way to look at it. See, bulls are also here and are for some reason treated as a different species. To remedy this, I'm introducing the new official term of subspecies. So now we can combine cows and bulls into one measure of data, since the only thing that really changes is their horns. And looking at our spread now, it doesn't really seem like bulls are in desperate need of a new rep. We're also combining bears and bear cubs and wolves and dogs. Now I'm sure this reclassification seems a little bit unnecessary right now, but trust me, we're lumping these guys together for good reason, because we're also going to introduce brand new subspecies. When I was a kid, I remember getting a little annoyed at how similar some of my villagers looked. The fact that they're almost all reskins without significant changes in their models is one of the biggest things I think the team could improve on design-wise. For example, there are 8 total goat villagers, making them a prime target to get new reps. But instead of keeping with tradition, I instead came up with the mountain goat subspecies. These guys are a lot burlier with longer horns and little beards. Chickens will get chicks like bears and cubs, and frogs, which admittedly don't need any more representation but they're my favorites and you can't stop me, will get toads. Toads will have wider, shorter faces and darker colors. And this brings us to 6 total subspecies, effectively broadening the variety of character designs without putting too much more stress on the dev team. For those of you who caught the first episode of this series, you can think of them like Echo Fighters in Smash Bros. We'll include 3 mountain goats, 2 toads, and 6 chicks, since those are the biggest alteration and could serve as a selling point alongside the new species, thus bringing our current total to 55 new villagers and leaving the remaining 31 to be spread out across the other pre-existing species. But that actually brings us to yet another problem. Once again, using frogs as an example, there is way too much overlap when it comes to personality types. I mean, 5 of them are jocks, 3 of them are cranky, and 4 of them are normal, which is crazy because Lily is right there. You guys didn't need 3 others, she's perfect as is. In New Horizons, personality types were severely dumbed down. Like for example, on my island, I have Lily and Lolly who share the normal personality type. The other day, they were both in the town square, and when I talked to them, they said the exact same piece of dialogue to me. And this isn't just some kind of freak accident that only happened to me either. Animal Crossing fans have criticized this game's lack of villager individuality for years. One factor contributing to this problem is just how restrictive those personality types really are. It's clear for anybody to see that they need a rework, so here's my pitch on how they should do it. First, we introduce 4 new personality types and give them to a lot of the villagers. That way, we're not just looking at fresh designs, but fresh personalities too. I'll go through my ideas for these new personality types one by one. The first one that came to mind is melancholic. Another common complaint about the modern Animal Crossing games is how everyone is just so chipper and dying to be your friend. So I wanted to address this by making a character who's a lot more reserved. Now when I say melancholic, I don't want you to think I'm proposing villagers that need to be taking antidepressants. No, my vision is more aligned with someone like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Characters who still openly get along with the player and other villagers on the island, but would rather stay inside and are a little bit more slower moving. Next, I came up with eccentric, which is basically just the nice word I'm using for weird. These villagers will say things that are a little off the wall or socially unaware, but they have a heart of gold. I think we can also go the new Leaf route and change some old villagers' personality types to this new one. My mind immediately goes to Lucky, for example. I love this guy, but the lazy type never really fit him in my opinion. And it's a little boring for such a unique, dare I say, eccentric design to have such a basic personality type. The third and final original personality type that I came up with, more on that later, is curious. Some of the most viral villager interactions online are ones like this, where they start asking a few too many questions. That's what inspired me to create curious villagers. They're more likely to ask you questions about yourself or make humorous observations about their day-to-day lives. These guys are always trying to understand the world around them, and I think that if Blathers was a regular villager, this would be his personality type. But back to business. Another reason why we see so much overlap here is because for some reason, the personality types are gendered. I really just don't get this at all. Like, why can't we have a peppy male villager or a lazy female villager? That invites so much more design opportunity that we're just completely missing out on. And because of that, we're completely doing away with the whole gendered personality type thing. I don't like that. There's just one little snag that we run into while doing this, that of course being the sisterly personality type. It makes sense to me why that one's gendered, okay? I'll give you that one. But there is an obvious way to combat this. We just add a brotherly personality type. Of course, it won't be the exact same as sisterly, but it only exists because of sisterly. These are the type of villagers that are playful and will openly tease you, but they've always got your back at the end of the day. Okay, so we've expanded variety to make sure that there isn't as much overlap as there was before, and we've created new species and subspecies to combat the feeling of everyone just being reskins of one another. But that alone doesn't fix the issue of villager personalities. I think the most obvious solution here is still the best one, just add more dialogue. But me saying that here in a hypothetical video game format isn't really entertaining for you, so I wanted to take it a step further. And when thinking about how to do this and brainstorming ideas for this video, I watched the Tomodachi Life Living the Dream Direct, which gave me this fantastic idea. Why don't we actually give the villagers something to talk about? As it stands, villagers just deliver some random piece of dialogue and then leave you to go about your day. But what if they had just a little bit more impact on the lives of you and other residents? Taking inspiration from Tomodachi Life, like I mentioned earlier, I think having the villagers on your island interact with each other by getting into little squabbles or maybe even forming crushes on one another would be game-changing. If you're close enough with them, they could confide this in you and ask your advice on working it out. Now, I'm not saying that this should be every interaction or even most of them, but again, what we're going for here is variety, and the chance of that happening will give you even more reason to log in each and every day. Going further with this concept, the villagers could host random events every now and then. For example, in the morning announcements, Isabel could mention that Alfonso is hosting a yard sale today. These wouldn't be scheduled or predictable at all and would just spice up the more mundane days between events. Okay, I know we've been talking about it for a long time, and I promise I'm almost done with this section, but I have 2 more ideas to share with you. In New Horizons, there is a maximum of just 10 villagers on your island, which is way too low. But given the fact that we're trying to keep this semi-realistic and Nintendo tends to do things in baby steps, we'll increase the total villager population to 15. And lastly, am I the only one who thinks it's a little weird that villagers are just willing to drop everything and move to your island in New Horizons? I don't know, I just find it weird that every single character is so enthusiastic to move to the middle of nowhere with someone that they just met. So to make them feel a little bit deeper, I decided to change up this system. Now, if you want a villager to come live with you, you have to actually convince them. For my fellow Atlas fans, think of the recruitment mechanic in Shin Megami Tensei. You have to pick the right dialogue options in the right order to convince them to come along. Like for peppy villagers, you have to frame it as this grand new opportunity for them to truly pursue their dreams to become a pop star. Or for grumpy villagers, you have to frame it as like, oh, it's this nice, beautiful oasis, a gorgeous place for you to retire. You kind of see where I'm getting here? And not only does this help you to really get to know the villagers before they agree to come live in your city, but it also plays into the game's main objective. You gotta work to get these people to take a chance on your new city. But now that we've covered the setting, characters, and basic game mechanics, let's actually get into what your day-to-day is gonna look like. As the city redevelopment manager, your cleanup role extends a lot further than just plucking weeds. On top of that, you'll have to cut down vines, repair the streets, and prepare the old buildings for businesses to move in. The DIY mechanic is also making a return, so you'll explore the mountains, caves, river, and land to gather materials. You can find extra rare ones on those expeditions I mentioned earlier. DIYs will be used to create the resources you need to do your job more efficiently. But don't worry, your tools won't break this time around, you can just use your workbench to upgrade them. The core gameplay loop I have in mind is pretty reliant on all of this. In New Horizons, you were tasked with bringing up your island rating to at least 3 stars, but the progression mechanic in New Beginnings is going to be slightly different. This is the City Appeal Meter, which was born out of my frustration with the star system. It's left pretty vague how you're supposed to increase your island rating in New Horizons, so to counter that, I made everything you do in this game contribute to the meter. It'll move up for every road you fix, every fossil you donate, every weed you pluck, and every villager you win over. Everything you do. Obviously, these tasks aren't all equal and will be worth different point values, but at the end of the day, when you ask Isabelle how your town is doing, you can see the impact that all your work had. There are 50 levels total, and clearing each level will grant you an unlock. These can range from DIY recipes to story events. For example, reaching level 2 prompts Tom Nook to ask you to retrieve the critter for Blathers to move in. Successfully completing this quest will unlock the museum on the following day. Since you could theoretically increase this meter a lot in the early game if you're dedicated enough, I could see challenge runs popping up online where players try to unlock everything in a day. But obviously the game disincentivizes that. Animal Crossing is an intentionally drawn-out experience, and you'll eventually run out of weeds and vines to farm points off of. Building upgrades and villagers will contribute the most to the meter, and you'll have to wait until the following day for those to be finalized and for you to get the points. Trust me, I made sure that this meter concept isn't that easy to abuse. Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit more about building upgrades, because that's yet another thing that was lacking in New Horizons. I'm picturing a business like Nook's Cranny starting as a little hole in the wall, then upgrading to a corner store, then upgrading to a medium-sized shop, a big market, and finally a superstore. 5 levels of progression for each building will really complement the theme of New Beginnings, but it also helps solve a problem with my own pitch that I haven't even mentioned yet. With DIY furniture making a comeback and Nook just giving you house upgrades for a job well done, I'm sure you're wondering what the point of bells are anymore. I mean, I've been talking about how Tom wants to build a thriving economy, but haven't even mentioned currency once so far. Well, this is it. If you want the businesses to upgrade, you've got to spend your hard-earned bells at places like the Able Sisters or Nook's Cranny. Each of their shop upgrades will net you massive points to your appeal meter, allowing you to advance the plot even faster. Places like the museum work the exact same way, just with donations. The only business that upgrades differently is actually one that will be making its grand return in this game. With all the shrubs, vines, weeds, and forest I mentioned, players are going to need constant help clearing out these areas. So, series staple Leaf will be opening up his very own gardening store, not seen since New Leaf. But this time, he's selling more than just flowers and watering cans. He can provide you with tools like lawn mowers, hedge trimmers, and other more complicated items that you can't craft using DIY. He also retains his purpose from New Horizons of buying your weeds for more bells than Timmy and Tommy. And the way that you upgrade his shop is by selling him enough of those leaves, weeds, and vines, just giving you even more incentive to clear out your space. But Leaf isn't the only one. We're returning everything from New Leaf's main street except for the photo booth and post office. Their services can be handled pretty easily at the airport. These little shops had been advancing for so long that it was really a shame for them to not be included on your main island in New Horizons. I know myself and plenty of other fans really missed a lot of our favorite NPCs too, so bringing them back into the spotlight will help us in our quest to make the city feel more alive again. The credits roll when your appeal meter hits level 50, and instead of a KK Slider concert, the game ends with the city's grand reopening ceremony. All the villagers gather inside the city center where Tom Nook praises you for all your hard work in redeveloping the renewed metropolis, and all 15 animal friends you made along the way are ready to celebrate you with party poppers in hand. But as all Animal Crossing fans know, the game doesn't truly end after the credits. Alright, I know I have torn New Horizons apart throughout most of this video, but it's an amazing game. Just one that I've been stuck with for about 6 years, so it's really easy for me to be pinpointing all these flaws and things that I'd like to change. With that said, I think that the island customization was an overall good idea and gave the game a long life after KK's concert. So I decided not to scrap the full customization, just recontextualize it a little bit. When you see him again after completing the game, Tom Nook will tell you that since you did such a good job redeveloping the city, all future redesigns are completely in your hands. And now you can once again terraform, move buildings around, or create little prisons for villagers that you deem to be way too ugly. I also wanted to add in a bit more multiplayer functionality, so if you give them permission to, your friends can join you and help edit your city too. Oh, and the mini games are making a comeback. Watching content creators try to make their own really just sort of felt sad, and I don't know why we got rid of this to begin with, so yes, the mini games are coming back. Other than that, it's just a lot of what you generally expect out of a good Animal Crossing. Events timed with the real world, deeper villager interactions, and decorating everything in sight. The beauty of this game is that even though it looks nothing like its predecessors, at its core, it's still the game we fell in love with, just evolved. But with all that said, thank you all so much for watching episode 2 of Let's Make a Game. To prove you made it this far, tell me your favorite villager in the comments below. I will make sure to respond to all of them. If you missed episode 1 of Let's Make a Game, it's on Smash Bros. It's right here, click it, it's really good. And with all that said, I think I already said that, but as always, please remember, believe to achieve.